Well, the rivalry appears to have been between Yunus, who had been a minister in Gaddafi's governments and a longtime associate of Gaddafi, sort of internal opposition, and then this guy Hifter, Khalifa Hifter or Haftar in various English renderings. That was the person who had lived in Northern Virginia, darling of the CIA, darling of the Pentagon, and had gone back. So there'd been a conflict between Yunus and Hifter. The reports were that the Yunus people were trying to call in NATO strikes on Hifter, and Hifter would respond by using his better connections to call in NATO strikes on the other side. So this is totally chaotic. The embarrassment growing out of this political assassination with the help of Al-Qaeda is so great now that the Norwegians have dropped out completely as of August 1st. Norway, which was 10% of the bombing effort, has dropped out. The Dutch, the Netherlands are still there, but they refuse to bomb. Canada will drop out next month. Berlusconi of Italy says that he was forced into this by the United States, by Obama and Hillary Clinton, and by President Napolitano of Italy, an old communist, interestingly enough, and by the votes of the neo-communists in the Italian parliament. Here in the United States, we've got a 15-vote margin in the House of Representatives. If 15 votes flip the other way, the House of Representatives will cut off funding for this. And now that you've mentioned Al-Qaeda, we here in Washington, D.C. have an Al-Qaeda base. And the Al-Qaeda base has been created by the State Department. The Libyan embassy on Virginia Avenue, close to the Watergate complex, the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the Key Bridge, and the Whitehurst Freeway, right in the middle of all that, there's now an Al-Qaeda base because the Libyan Rebel Council, the Benghazi gaggle of Libyan Islamic Fighting Group and Al-Qaeda have taken over the building. So here in Washington, we're at grave danger compared to what we were before.
Mr. Maher Saroom, is there a covert relationship between the United States and Al-Qaeda in Libya? What's your take on that?
It could be, but I do not have enough proof tonight or anywhere right now. But I believe when what Mr. Webster have been saying in Washington does have a parallel. Say, what do I have to say now is that the Al-Qaeda have a mutual interest in cutting or in hurting or in bringing down the TNC inside Benghazi, as we have witnessed the assassination of Abdul Fattah Yunus, the major commander of the TNC inside Benghazi, or the east, let's say, parts of Libya today. Now, the mutual interest, I think, by the West and Al-Qaeda could be in hurting or minimizing the power of the TNC or the rebels inside Libya in order for them to create a certain balance equally vis-a-vis the Gaddafi forces inside Libya. Hence, there will be a chance for them to let their any dialogue maybe in the future and where they can have it under the auspices, let's say, of Hillary Clinton, the Minister of State or the Secretary of State of the United States of America, and the European, for sure, Union under what is called the NATO alliance, let's say, militarily. And then we can create a chance for dialogue between both factions or the conflicting factions, I mean Gaddafi forces and the rebels themselves under Mustafa Abdul Jalil. In case this scenario succeeds in bringing down, the war and letting the peace, arrive inside Libya or rises inside Libya, then we have a great chance of providing stability and economical stability, back towards the lands of Libya. But I think it will take months and months ahead, or maybe years ahead, to let back Libya to its feet. And just like we witnessed, even though under the Gaddafi forces, he had a great economy or a boosting economy, but unfortunately we didn't have equal and justice or social justice under the regime of Gaddafi towards his own people, and his own corruption has prevailed in bringing down the whole social or the social justice inside the state of Libya.
Well, the major question now to many people, John Rees in London, if I could put that question to you, is whether the TNC is going to be a suitable replacement for the Gaddafi regime. And that's a question that's being raised a lot now in various articles by political observers. The government in Britain, where you are, some have been saying that it's been making a hasty approach alongside other foreign powers in immediately recognizing the TNC as the legitimate government in Libya. Do you think that has been a hasty approach, that there's still not enough knowledge about who is making up the TNC and whether they are suitable to replace the Gaddafi regime?
Well, the British government's foreign policy is now in a mess over Libya. It assumed that there would be a quick victory, and it's proved to be exactly the opposite of that. And I think that they're very, very worried about that. So that you see William Hague, the British Foreign Secretary, simultaneously, almost on the same day, making statements recognising the TNC on the one hand, and then on the other hand saying that he would be perfectly happy if Colonel Gaddafi were to stay in Libya as long as he steps down from power, that there won't be any question of International Criminal Court or anything like that. So I think we can see that the stalemate in the war in Libya, the inability to get a quick victory, is producing chaos inside the British foreign policy establishment on this issue. And one of the difficulties they have, of course, is that their own intervention in Libya, their own drive to get control of the TNC, has entirely broken that institution as a proper representative of the original revolutionary outburst by the Libyan people. A bought revolution, a revolution that's been purchased by the imperial powers, of course, will only have figures within it who are vying for influence with the imperial powers, who want to create a situation where they are the representatives of the people with the money and the guns inside the TNC. That will produce the rivalries that we've seen break out in an absolutely murderous fashion recently. So the process of intervention, the process of the major powers becoming involved in Libya, was always going to corrupt and break the TNC as an effective representative of the opposition to Gaddafi.
Well, if the situation is now near a stalemate in Libya, if I could put this question to Dr. Tarpley, do you think, Dr. Tarpley, that NATO will, in the near future, maybe make the decision, as our guest in Beirut was earlier suggesting, to start negotiations to stop the military campaign and even talk of a solution that would include a division in Libya?
I think you're going to have a lot of trouble dividing Libya, because I think this is a country that has strong nationalism, and the fact that Gaddafi is still in power in most of Libya, certainly most of the population, indicates that Gaddafi has real popular support. People who were lukewarm on Gaddafi have been driven back into the Gaddafi camp by the atrocities and war crimes of NATO. So now the question is, where does this all go? It seems to me that the NATO coalition is falling apart. The Benghazi Rebel Council is falling apart. Again, this is now the season of the town meetings here, right? The Congress is no longer in Washington. They're at home, and they're getting an earful. I know in Vermont this morning, the congressman from Vermont, Representative Welsh, has gotten an earful from a bunch of citizens who want this war ended. The United States is sick of war, and the people are, at least, and this has no popular support. It never did. The point I would make is that from the very beginning, the effective armed forces of the rebellion, and it was armed and violent from the first day, were the Libyan Islamic group and Al-Qaeda. And since then, we've had, since Al-Qaeda is the CIA Arab Legion and always has been, we've had fighters coming back from Afghanistan and Pakistan all over the Arab and Islamic world have been brought in to fight for the Benghazi Rebel Council. So the press has not done their job, but this is a monstrosity, and this is now the conjuries and gaggle that have moved in to the Libyan embassy on Virginia Avenue here in Washington, D.C., and I think that's something to be really worried about, and I think congressmen will be hearing about that too.
All right, well, if you're saying then that NATO is getting help from these militants, in your words, from these anti-Gaddafi forces in Beirut, Mr. Maher Saloom, why then has it still not been able to force Gaddafi out, to end rather the civil war, the conflict in Libya? Why is this war continuing? Or I may ask, what is giving the Gaddafi regime so much strength to withstand?
Because I believe there are some still tribes and people who are representatives of the Republic of Libya that they are supporting and backing the Gaddafi regime and himself and his sons, for sure, Saif al-Islam and other ruling sons. But let me pinpoint something that it came up to my mind while Mr. Webster was speaking. I believe Al-Qaeda, the whole plan or the conspiracy towards Libya is to form a certain part of Libya. It could be in the south and the deserts of Libya, where they can have their own independent mini-state as Libyans that are followers or supporters of Al-Qaeda, maybe Osama bin Laden, the late one, or al-Zawahiri today as a ruler of Al-Qaeda internationally. Now, the whole situation between Benghazi and the capital Tripoli and Al-Qaeda is to separate those three and make a threesome division inside the Republic of Libya, where Arabs of Libya are divided, unfortunately. I believe there should be a part of it, I believe also, in parallel with what Mr. Webster mentioned earlier, a certain nationalistic support towards the Gaddafi by his followers. But what we need to apply, I wish the West can apply the measures of the true democracy and the tools that they can supply themselves inside the West, whether using the Congress, the Senate and the Congress in the States, or the parliaments inside Europe. Now what we need is to develop our skills, democratically speaking, inside Libya, support the people of Libya in order for them to choose whatever constitution they want, their own new president one day, and the new parliament that they seek for. There shall be justice for all and socially uncorrupt or not corruption, no corruption under the lands of Libya.
Thanks very much. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Mr. Maher Saloom, human rights activist, joining us there live from Beirut. I'd also like to thank John Rees from Stop the War Coalition in London and Dr. Webster Tarpley, author and historian, joining us live from Washington. Thanks so much for staying with this edition of News Analysis. From me, Homa Lezgi, and our team here in Tehran, it's goodbye.